Welcome to Channel 17, the Town of Colonie Government Channel.
Okay, welcome to So Many Books, So Little Time. My name is Joe Nash, and I'm here with Zina Shevchik. We're both librarians here at the Colonie Library. And if you haven't seen our show, the premise is we go down to the new bookshelf, and we go down to our technical services department where the new books that aren't even on the shelf yet are being processed, and we bring a whole bunch of them up to tell you about. And these are usually the kind of books you may not know we have, or the kinds of books you maybe haven't heard of. So Zina, as usual, will go first.
Thank you, Joe. My first book is called Why Boys Fail: Saving Our Sons from an Educational System That's Leaving Them Behind, by Richard Whitmire, who is a longtime education reporter down in Washington. And his premise is that there's an increasing achievement gap between boys and girls, and that the last few decades have been spent trying to equalize education for the girls. And he thinks that it's about time the United States focused on the gap between boys and girls, that the girls are succeeding in school beyond the boys, and that he uses these statistics to make his point. 58% of the people who graduate with bachelor's degrees from college are girls, and 62% of those who graduate from two-year colleges with associate degrees are women. And he says it starts in the early elementary grades. And the reason he says this is important is that our world has become increasingly verbal, and the boys are not keeping up. He makes a point of highlighting the methods by which this achievement gap can be corrected. He presents case studies of schools that operate in a certain way, teachers that teach in a certain way that do seem to make a difference. He talks about how boys maybe aren't ready to sit still and learn reading early, and maybe they need reading instruction in their middle and later elementary years as well. He also mentions, just as part of the problem, that he doesn't think there's, or some people have suggested that there aren't enough books published that appeal to young boys. And as a librarian, I think that I disagree with that. I do disagree with that. We have in our library an extensive children's room through the 9th grade reading level, and we also have a teen young adult room, and we have librarians who are focused on those age groups, and they are available for parents, teachers, anybody in the community who wants advice on what books might appeal to reluctant readers, both boys and girls. So later in the show, I'm going to highlight some of the books that we do have that might appeal to boys and young adults. So this is a very timely book, and it's called Why Boys Fail: Saving Our Sons from an Educational System That's Leaving Them Behind. Joe?
All right, my first book, I have two books here, about the immigrant experience in America. First book is from the Library of America. A couple of shows ago, I talked about the Library of America. I won't repeat that, but if you just go to loa.org, you can find out all about it. This is one of their latest books from the Library of America. It's called Becoming Americans: 4 Centuries of Immigrant Writing. And what it does is it goes back, I think the first entry is from the 1600s. And all the selections in this book are from immigrants. And it starts from the 1600s right up until, I think, the last the last excerpts from Richard Rodriguez from his memoir about growing up. Richard Rodriguez, from his book called Hunger Memory, he grew up as a Latino or Mexican American, I think. But it has over 80 writers, over 100 selections, and it isn't, so it's a little bit of everything from people who were immigrants and who became writers. It has poems, stories, novel excerpts, travel pieces, diary entries, memoirs, and letters. And like I say, if you know the Library of America, it's a wonderful selection. 400 years of what it means to be an immigrant in America, and why people left, what coming here, and what it was like, the old country, the ambivalence to the new country, et cetera, et cetera. So it looks very interesting. But in conjunction with this book, this is 400 years of immigrant history. This is another new book, From Every End of This Earth, by Stephen Roberts, 13 Families and the New Lives They Made in America. And what he does is profile 13 families currently. It's a brand new book. Why they came to America, what it's like in America for them, how they're getting by and all that. And each essay, or not an essay, each article is about, 20, 25 pages. And he profiles these 13 families. I'll tell you where they're from. Vietnam, Rwanda, Sierra Leone, Hong Kong, China, India, Greece, El Salvador, Ukraine, Pakistan, Mexico, Afghanistan, Egypt, Germany, Israel, Greece, and Burma. So it looks like a really good book. And where the title comes from every end of this earth, the author was saying, I'll just read this one sentence. During Obama's inauguration, he's one of the things that the author was there, Obama said, "We are a nation of Christians and Muslims, Jews and Hindus, and non-believers. We are shaped by every language and culture, drawn from every end of this earth." So hence the title, From Every End of This Earth. 13 families and the new lives they made in America, along with this becoming Americans, 400 years, 4 centuries of immigrant writing about America. Both books look very interesting.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see how the experiences are different. My grandparents both came at the beginning of 1900s, and it would be interesting to read to see how it's different.
And he covers all the groups that came over, and it's a really good selection. And it's everything, like I say, fiction, nonfiction, travel, diaries.
Great.
Looks pretty good.
Yeah. I'm going to profile 2 books that are in our young adult collection. Speaking to the previous book, I was talking about why boys fail and suggesting that there weren't enough books out there for boys to be that boys might be interested in. And I just want to say that we have an incredible youth services children's room, and we have a teen room, a young adult teen room as well, and they collect incredible material, and our staff is trained to in those departments to offer readers advisory to make suggestions for just like that, maybe reluctant readers, maybe they might be boys, and they would be happy to help anyone who's interested in finding material that their children might be inspired by. This book is called Phineas Gage, A Gruesome But True Story About Brain Science by John Fleischman. And again, this is a young adult children's book, but actually I found it, I had never heard of this person, this Phineas Gage. He's from, in 1848, he was a railroad foreman and blasting expert who made a mistake, and a rod went through his brain. And this is something a boy would, certainly a boy
yes,
would,
I know
would
that
love.
Story. Yes,
you know
of
the
course.
story?
The rod, and he lived right through his head.
He lived for 10 years with a rod in his brain. Well, actually, the rod didn't stay in his brain. It went out the other end, the top of his head, apparently. But the book talks about how the country learned, well, scientists learned about brain development and what parts of the brain control what aspects of our personality and our movements and speech, and it's got great pictures, and the story is fantastic. And this, even though it's a relatively thin book and there's lots of white space, we call it, and big print. These are good. These kinds of books are good introductions for adults as well. I found it fascinating, and I had never heard about it before, and so I just want to use this as an example of something that's in our collection that boys, young and old, might enjoy. And another title that adults and youngsters might enjoy. From Discover magazine. It's called 20 Things You Didn't Know About Everything. Apparently, the Discover magazine has a column monthly that's titled 20 Things You Didn't Know or Didn't Know About Things, 20 Things, something like that. This talks about duct tape, airport security, your body, and it's a really entertaining read. And again, it's written in pretty big print, lots of white space again, and it's an entertaining read. Here's something.
Would that book be in the teen room? Is that a teen?
This is actually an adult book, but I think it's totally appropriate. Let me just make sure. Yeah, it's considered an adult book, but it's something that anybody would enjoy reading, and as I said, the writing and the print is suitable for certainly teenagers and middle schoolers. And let's see, it talks about bees. There are 16,000 species of bees. 5% of them are social. 80,000 of them colonize a single hive. Bees fly on every continent but Antarctica. And let's see, they've been used as a source of food since ancient times. Let's see, your liver is your largest internal organ. It says an adult male liver, especially on Monday nights, is about the size of a football. And just, fascinating things, fun things. So it's entertainment as well as popular science. Okay. 20 things you didn't know about everything.
All right, so you're saying if it came down to reading about a guy who lived with a spike through his head for 10 years or Pride and Prejudice, boys would pick that?
I think so, don't you? Am I right or wrong? Most boys. We won't totally generalize.
Well, here's a book. It's called Why Architecture Matters by Paul Goldberger. And this book, Paul Goldberger is the architecture critic for the New Yorker magazine. And I saw him on Charlie Rose, and sometimes when I watch Charlie Rose, I'll watch the first 5 or 10 minutes, and if it's a subject that doesn't interest me, I won't watch it. But I think, well, I'll give this guy a shot. Not that I know that much about architecture, but it was absolutely fascinating. And this book makes you want to read it. My wife read this book, and she said it was great. You didn't know that she had this architecture.
No, I didn't.
Thing, did you?
But I'm not surprised.
But anyway, Why Architecture Matters by Paul Goldberger, and what he's trying to do in this book, in essence, is the purpose of this book. He says it's not about the history and what a flying buttress is and all that stuff. He says he wrote the book for us to come to grips with how things feel to us when we stand before them, how architecture affects us emotionally as well as intellectually. So, and then, like I say, I saw him talk for an hour on Charlie Rose. It was really fascinating. You wouldn't think it would be that interesting, but there's a lot of pictures of the buildings he talks about and some of the concepts. So, and the book, excellent reviews. Why Architecture Matters by Paul Goldberger.
Charlie Rose is on PBS every night at 11 or 11:30, and he does lengthy interviews, and it's fantastic. I learn an incredible amount, and he makes rather obscure topics or subjects very easy to learn about. So I recommend that show. My next book is, and I think this book will probably be on the bestseller list, or at least it'll get a lot of publicity. The Power of Half: One Family's Decision to Stop Taking and Start Giving Back by Kevin and Hannah Salwin. These people, this family, and this is nonfiction. This is true. had lived in a $2 million house, and they were blessed with material success, no doubt about it. And they were inspired by their 14-year-old daughter who saw a homeless man one day driving by and started asking questions about why their family had so much, and that man she saw had nothing. And it's a story of how they came to the decision to sell their house and donate half of the price, the money they got from their home, to a charity actually it was to a town in Africa, in Ghana, to set up community centers and schools and medical facilities. And it addresses a lot of questions about how we decide to give to others, and the struggle to decide to do that, and to decide how to give and to whom to give. And I'm making it sound very heavy and dramatic, but it's a well-written story, and it talks about how difficult it was to sell their house, but how it changed their family more than anything else, and how it made their family much more cohesive, and unified them all, and just changed their whole way of life and way of thinking. So I highly recommend it. It's an inspirational story, and it's written by the daughter, Hannah, and her father. And he also it's from Atlanta. They lived in Atlanta, and he also was a Wall Street Journal reporter at one point. So The Power of Half.
Okay, here's a book came out last fall, but it's still on the new bookshelf, so I brought it up, and it's right here. It's a book that's proved to be very popular. It's called Read My Pins: Stories from a Diplomat's Jewel Box by Madeleine Albright. You may have heard of this book. What the book is, I guess she was famous for her jewelry on all these diplomatic trips she went on. She would always wear these different pins, and the book tells you, maybe you can see some, I'll hold some of these up. There's a lot of pictures of all these different pins that she wore on all her diplomatic journeys. And I guess she was known for this. And this, she put them all together in this book, and she tells the story of each one, how she got it, why she got it, where she wore it to.
Oh, that's a cowboy hat.
That's a cowboy hat, yeah. But it's interesting, and I just thought she just wore these things, and this is a picture and where she got them. But as it turns out, as I was looking at this book, she says that they actually had a little meaning for her each time. It says here it's part memoir, part social history. Let's see, it says, where was it? She had a thing here. She started, the first time she did it, she was going somewhere, she wore a snake pin. And, people, I guess they were noticing this, but it turns out she was trying to convey the message. I forgot who she was talking to, that America, don't tread on me. So I'm just trying to find, there's a thing here where she says, no, I can't find it now. Well, anyway, it's a look at her life through the brooches she wore, and the collection is both international and democratic, and but it's a little bit of everything, and some of these are really beautiful, I have to say. And a lot of them, she tells the story of each pin or brooch, and there's a picture of her with, the leader of the country. She was the first, female Secretary of State, so she was all over the world. And I wish I could find, there was one great quote here, but
that was in the 1990s.
Oh, here it is. It says, Madeleine Albright used pins to emphasize the importance of negotiation, signify high hopes, protest the absence of progress, and show pride in representing America, among other purposes. So this book is all filled with that, and it's been very popular. I mean, and here's it on the cover. I don't know if you probably can't see that. The cover is a pin. It's like the Statue of Liberty's head, but the eyes are like little clocks. But it's really very interesting, very fascinating. So,
it is. I've looked at that book.
You've seen this book? Okay.
Yeah, and a lot of people gave her the pins. A
lot of them were gifts, yes.
A lot of them were gifts from leaders of other countries. And yes, she did use her pins as a tool in a lot of her diplomacy.
So it's 3 or 4 months old, but it was still on the new bookshelf. So Read My Pins by Madeleine Albright.
My next book is it was actually published quite a while ago. We have a copy in our circulating collection, and we just got another copy to put in the reference. And it's called It Happened in the Catskills, An Oral History in the Words of Busboys, Bellhops, Guests, Proprietors, Comedians, Agents, and Others Who Lived It by Myrna and Harvey Fromer. And it's about all the resorts in the Catskills and in the words of the people who lived it. And let's see, I think it was written, 1991 was the first edition. This is a reprinting. It's not a new edition, but it's an oral history of what the Jewish comedians used to call the Borscht Belt. It's a New York State vacation haven in the middle of the 20th century. It talks about Grossingers, the Concord, and I've heard of those too, but the Neville, Nevele, I didn't know about that resort. And it talks about how Milton Berle, Red Buttons, Neil Sedaka, Tony Martin got their starts in entertaining in these wonderful resorts in the Catskills. It's got lots of pictures, and it has a lot. It says the review says it has a lot of ethnic jokes in it as well, and so I think for local interest, this is fascinating. Again, it's a 20-year-old book, but this is a new copy that we're putting in our reference section, and I did not know existed before I saw it on our newly received books. So It Happened in the Catskills.
Okay, the first two books I talked about were about immigrants, the immigrant experience, and I just happened to see this on the new bookshelf when I was down there getting those two books, and this would be a good contrast to those two books. These are people who are not immigrants. They're from other countries, but they're writing about America. The book is called, it's very small, you can't see it, it's called How They See Us, Meditations on America, and these are writers in other countries. I think there are 21 writers talking about what they think of America, how they perceive America from, like I say, I don't think, some of these essays I think aren't that complimentary about America, so I don't know how many, these people probably won't be becoming immigrants. But what it says here is 21 distinguished international writers hold up the mirror to the United States, their ally and nemesis. So I think they go both ways. Some of the articles, some of the little essays, for example, the person from India's essay is entitled, In Praise of the Delinquent Hero, or Hollywood Creates Terrorists. I don't know. The person from Morocco is entitled, Dear America. So, but some people, it can only get better. Getting the harness bells a shake. So I'm not sure what these are all about, but as I say, these are distinguished writers in other countries writing what they think about America now in 2010 in the midst of unprecedented change, it says here. So this is a good contrast to the immigrant book. How They See Us, Meditations on America, edited by James Atlas. Zina?
Okay. This is a history book. Something I don't read much about, military history. I don't know much about it, and so that's why it attracted my attention. It's called I'm Staying with My Boys, The Heroic Life of Sergeant John Basilone. I think that's how it's called, Basilone or Basilone. It says the authorized biography of the legendary Marine featured in HBO's The Pacific. And the nephew of the Sergeant John Basilone was involved in the writing of this book, and so that's why they're saying it's the only authorized biography of this gentleman. He was the only Marine in World War II to have received the Medal of Honor, the Navy Cross, and a Purple Heart, and is arguably the most famous Marine of all time. It says it has photographs never published before, and it talks about his transition from, they call it an aimless youth, to a war hero known as Manila John. What's also interesting, it's not highlighted in this book, but and I can understand why, but apparently he had some premonitions, and he had a talent for foreseeing his own future, and he did anticipate his death. And I guess they don't talk about that too much because people are skeptical about that, but that is part of the book as well. So, authorized biography of Sergeant John Bassaloni, I'm Staying with My Boys.
Okay, my next book, I always try to bring one book a show as an example of a certain section of our library that's very popular that you might not know about. And biographies, of course, are very popular. It's, I think, in our budget for buying books, our nonfiction budget, I think biographies we spend the most on for nonfiction. But anyway, within the biography group, a very popular kind of biography that people like are movie star biographies or autobiographies. Now, this is an autobiography. It's called Thank Heaven. So do you know who this might be about, Zina?
Thank heaven for little girls, something like that.
Yes,
Great,
this is the memoir, an autobiography by Leslie Caron. Now, you know who she is, of course.
She's a dancer,
Yes.
Singer, actress.
Does
that mean because of my age, I know who she is?
I was saying to Zina yesterday, we have a lot of young people work in the library. Well, they're not that young, but you say Leslie Caron, and they're like, who's that? But this book got really good reviews. She seems like a very nice person. Of course, you know her. She was in Gigi and American in Paris on TV shows. She starred with, Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, Cary Grant, Maurice Chevalier, Warren Beatty. She's been doing TV. She's been doing TV lately. She's still alive. And this picture on the cover, I don't know how old she is.
Well, she can't be very young.
No, but she was a wonderful dancer. And this is her memoir of her Hollywood days, and it got some really nice reviews. So Leslie Caron, and memoir is called Thank Heaven.
All right. From something sweet and nice to Dr. Henry C. Lee's shocking cases from his forensic files. We have a good readership of these kinds of materials. Last book show, I talked about some books we had on other forensic science, CSI-based, the TV show-based forensic information. And this is one of, I think, 4. I think we have 3 of Dr. Henry Lee's other books where he outlines cases that I don't know that he, sorry. I don't know if he actually worked on these. No, he explores 5 notorious cases, including the Phil Spector murder trial, genocide in Bosnia-Herzegovina, which is different, and the shooting of a Connecticut state trooper. So Lee has worked on, he worked on the O.J. Simpson case for one. So he's very well known and probably the most well-known forensic scientist in our country today. And so he does a good job of making the science behind the criminal investigations accessible to the layperson. So this is 3 or 4 more shocking cases from Dr. Henry Lee's forensic files.
Okay, well, here's a book you'll probably be hearing a lot about because the author's been on all the talk shows and there's been a lot of reviews. And it's been all over the place, but it's just coming out. We're filming this on February, today the 25th?
Yes.
I don't even know, but anyway, it's called The Death of American Virtue, Clinton versus Starr. And it's a big, massive 700-page book about the investigations. I should say investigations. It's not just about the impeachment trial. It starts when Kenneth Starr investigated Whitewater, and the book culminates in the impeachment trial. But the interesting thing about this book, and all the reviews I read, he interviewed hundreds of people, but specifically he interviewed President Clinton, Kenneth Starr, Monica Lewinsky, Linda Tripp, Paula Jones, Susan McDougal, and he got extensive interviews with these people. And I guess the reviews I read said he really got him to open up and talk about the case, or there were several cases apparently. So it starts with Whitewater and culminates, and it's really getting good reviews, and all the parties involved seem to have many sort of regrets, including kind of the star. It looks very interesting. The Death of American Virtue, Clinton versus Starr by Ken Gormley.
That's some big book.
Yes, 700 pages if you want to give it a shot.
I think the impeachment papers were about that long.
Yeah, it's getting good reviews though.
No, I'm just I will look at it. My last book, I didn't want to forget the girls. So this is a teen and young adult book, probably for younger than that as well. The Girl's Guide to Rocking. It talks about how to advertise for bandmates. This is for girls who want to develop a rock band. It says, for any aspiring Alicia Keys or Joan Jett. How to advertise for bandmates, pick a name, what to look for in equipment. It gives advice on how to choose equipment and how to get jobs. And it talks about how to approach the music business, the music industry, with realistic expectations. And there's lots of photographs and lots of good advice in here. And this is just an example of the kind of thing that a parent should bring to their attention of their teenagers and children, that there's so much in this library, and that we do have a teen room where this kind of material would be, and we also have a children's room where they have through the 9th grade reading level. So anybody who's obsessed with music, here's how to make your rock star dreams come true. Joe?
Okay, so we have time for one more. This book is the kind of book I would glom on to because it just looks so interesting. I like to read history. This book is called The Red Flag, A History of Communism by David Priestland. And the thing that's interesting to me anyway, as I'm looking at this, you wonder why certain countries maybe became communist. This book starts with the, I think it starts around the 1700s, the French Revolution, goes right up to 1989 when when Russia fell. And I think, there's still some communist countries today, but at one time, communists ruled a third of the world's population. I don't know, the 40s and 50s maybe.
Yeah.
But the interesting thing, I was reading the flap here, Priestland shows how communism in all its varieties appealed to different societies for different reasons, in some as a response to inequalities, and in others more out of a desire to catch up with the West, which that's fine. And the book covers, obviously, Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Castro, Mao, Che Guevara, Ho Chi Minh, Gorbachev, etc. Again, it looks very interesting. When you think about, you would wonder sometimes how the ideology could sort of take over a country, but this book looks very interesting. The Red Flag, A History of Communism by David Priestland. So do you have any more?
No, I'm done. Just to remind people that all these books are going to be listed at the end of this program. And if you don't catch that, we have a blog where we list all of our books, So Many Books, So Little Time show on our webpage, www.colonie.org/library. Joe?
All right, well, thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.